So what we do here is this progress bar is essentially what happens if we okay, so this progress bar goes from 0 to 1, but obviously the beam, we want to create a more traditional system for that. So instead of it going from 0 to 1, we want something such as 100. Logically, it's still 0. It goes from 0 to 1, but what we essentially do is we set the float of the health. We set that to 0 or 100 rather. We divide that by 0 or 100. Which of course gives us 1. So logically it is still 1, but in terms of the system itself, how much damage the beam has to do is still 100, which makes tweaking these variables rather a little more intuitive. And we're doing this, we're setting this for every single bar that is on these legs. So all of these 6 bars, this is all that has been, that is all that is defined right over here. And essentially, it all sets this once the one of or either of these legs has been have been hit. And now we get to the actual depleting of the legs and actually destroying it. So what essentially happens here is let's just get one of these. But there are a few things that are happening here. So we got the component. We need to make sure that the component that we're hitting is the same as, or this component is the same as the component that we're actually hitting with the beam. Then we have to make sure that both the so if these are if the component that we have referenced here and the component that we're actually hitting are the same, and the beam that we're actually hitting it with is friendly, in other words it's a blue beam of the beam player, then we can execute this further, and we need to create one more check and see whether or not the wall crawler has actually been stunned. And if the wall crawler has actually been stunned, that is when the players are able to actually shoot the legs right over here. So what we're doing over here, if stunned is true, then we can deplete the legs. And what this does is we get the health of the leg that has been hit, and we subtract the beam damage from that. And the beam damage is something that is done, or is damage that is done for every tick, rather. So we get the original value, which is 100, and for each tick, rather, it currently does 10 damage, 10 points of damage. So obviously this will be very fast because it's based on tick, so it will probably be destroyed within a few seconds. This macro is essentially just making sure that we provide some visual feedback. let's see. But the main thing, of course, is to check whether or not the wall crawler has actually been hit by the. So if we should probably put it more like this. So there are two systems at place here. Here it checks how much health there actually is. And if the health of one leg is smaller or equal to 0, then obviously it should be gone. So what happens here, if that is true, if the health of this specific leg is either smaller or equal to 0, then execute the following. If that is true, then what it should do is it sets the material so it gives some visual feedback. In this case, it's a red material. It is that's the cube or rectangle is changed into, and then we set simulate physics. And what this basically does is it shows the leg actually falling off. That specific leg falling off, and then we destroy this later on. But the main thing here is to make sure that we create a boolean. In this case, it's leg 5 destroyed, and what this does, it allows us to later define what happens if all of these legs have been destroyed. What happens if all of these legs have been destroyed? And we do this for all of the 6 legs that are here. So we get the health, and if the health of that specific leg is smaller or equal to 0, then we execute the visual feedback, which is set material and delay. We set simulate physics, so we provide some more visual feedback in regards to the leg actually falling off of the rest of the body, so to speak. And we set its variable. And then after a second, the player is able to see the wall or the leg actually falling off. At that point, we destroy the component, which is, in this case, it would be the widget. So that will be the red bar on that specific leg, and then we destroy the other component, which is the actual the white rectangle or cube. And we do this for all of the legs over here. And now this is where it gets interesting. Essentially what is happening here is there is a event tick that is constantly, for every frame, is asking whether or not all the wall or whether or not all the legs have been destroyed. So this is a check to see it is all linked towards these 6 booleans, which should be set to true. So in this case, if the leg 5 has been destroyed, then that is set to true. And the idea here is that all of the legs have to be destroyed in order to execute the following. And this event rather is asking that on every tick. It's constantly on every tick. It's asking right here whether or not all the legs have been destroyed. And if it has been destroyed, then we actually in this case we do some more visual feedback, but we also make sure that the wall crawler is not able to do anything anymore, because if all the legs have been destroyed, then the wall crawler is considered to be defeated. And there's some the only thing that we really do is destroy the wall crawler, and then open the door over here. So here it essentially says, okay, well, if all the legs have been destroyed, then change the material, so we give some more visual feedback, and then stay and stun. this essentially allows us to make sure that the wall crawler is not able to do anything anymore. So we set all the values related to jumping, jump speed, random jump chance. We set it all to 0, and that way we can make sure that the wall crawler is unable to do anything at that point. But while we're doing that, there's another event that is over here, which is also asked for every single tick. So it's the same as here. It checks, or it asks whether on every tick whether or not all the legs have been destroyed. So these have all been connected towards this end node over here. So if all of these legs have been destroyed, then execute the following. If of course if not all the legs have been destroyed, then we print a string called all legs have not been destroyed. They have to be destroyed first. But if it's true, then provide some more visual feedback in terms of changing the material. Provide some haptic feedback in terms of controller vibration. We create some more visual feedback here by creating a slow motion effect. And eventually we destroy the wall crawler. Right now it basically disappears, but of course this will be changed somewhat in the actual polishing stage. So that is when the wall crawler has actually been defeated. Now the only thing that we really define more here is the stun point, and how that relates to the jumping state and the idle state. Naturally, if the wall crawler is in its idle state and it's essentially just sitting here on the wall, then we don't want the players to get close to it and then be able to stun it. That is not really the idea here. The risk of getting close to the wall crawler is that the closer the beam player gets to the wall crawler, the more chance it has to actually start jumping. But obviously if it's in the idle state and just sitting over here, then we don't want the shield player to actually stun it, because that would remove most of the challenge of the boss fight. And essentially what we're doing is, this is when the state machine comes in play, and this is another thing that is regulated by C++. So there are these states in the C++ code, which are the idle state and the jumping state, and whenever it returns the state called jumping, that is when we do the following. So because this is programmer art mainly, we cover up the actual area that the stun area, which is the area that the shield needs to overlap with in order to stun it. We cover that up, or at least I cover that up currently with a box. So the players are not able to get to overlap with that area while the wall crawler is in the idle state. But if it is jumping, then obviously we do want the players to be able to, or the shield player to be able to stun it. And at that point we essentially remove this this cube, which I call stun point protection, and we disable the collisions right here. So if the wall crawler is currently in the state called jumping, then we disable the collisions on this stun point protection, but we also make that invisible. So at this point there's nothing stopping the shield player from getting close, using the shield and stunning it. But obviously, once it is no longer stunned, then we need to make sure that that system is back in place, so that the stun point protection is back again, and the collisions are working. So again, the wall crawl or the shield or the players are not able to stun it while it's actually just sitting on the wall right there. And this is what is done here, along with the aura, which is the sort of the bluish aura sphere right here, which is again some more visual feedback in terms of when it has actually been hit, when it has not been hit. But essentially, if it is jumping, then we remove we disable the collisions of this cube. We toggle the visibility of the cube, so it's not visible anymore. So that gives the affordance that the players can actually go there and stun it. And we do the same for the aura. So if the players hit it with the wall crawler with the shield, then the aura is removed, and the players have more of a visual have some form of visual feedback to understand. Okay, I've probably hit it right now. And this works all in combination with the sound effects and setting the materials, as mentioned previously in the stun state explanation. So that is mainly everything for the sort of the internal logic. But next, this is related to the jumping from wall to wall, because obviously if the wall crawler is currently stunned, then we need to make sure that the wall crawler is in this position where the legs are actually exposed, facing the open area of the arena, as opposed to sitting over here and being rotated in this manner, where the legs are facing the wall of the arena, which is not really inviting the players to actually hit it. Either the players have to stand over here, or they have to stand over here. And this has everything to do with rotations. And this is done in the level blueprint, which I will open up now. Let's see if it's actually right. Okay. So yeah, the only thing worth mentioning is this part of the blueprint. This has everything to do with the rotations, as I mentioned earlier. There's an event tick right over here that essentially regulates the smooth rotations of the wall crawler. So if it is currently hitting a wall, or it's targeting a wall, well, not like that, but if it's targeting a wall in this manner, but it's not stunned, then obviously we want a smooth rotation where the wall crawler actually jumps correctly. Whereas if it's actually stunned, then the wall crawler should stay in this rotation, rather. And this is all done in the level blueprint, as I said. First, let's start off with the easiest part. So let's say we're right now at the right wall, so let's take that as an example. So within these four walls there are trigger volumes, and these trigger volumes essentially cast a ray towards the BP wall crawler, which is the actual wall crawler actor. So if a trigger volume is overlapped by in this case the BP wall crawler, then we do a few more things. So we get a reference to the wall crawler over here, and we get the previously made or created booleans is stunned and all legs destroyed in order to make sure that the rotations are correct. So for here, if the wall crawler